It started with chicken marsala. Rachel had made it from scratch, a rare effort these days. The wine sauce was rich, the mushrooms earthy, the candlelight flickering like we were pretending to be a couple that still lit candles for each other. She was trying. Or she wanted something. I just didn't expect that. We were halfway through dinner when she set her fork down and said, almost too casually, "So, I've been reading about polyamory." I looked up. "Reading?" She nodded, smiled like it was nothing. "You know, open relationships. Ethical non-monogamy." She used the right words. I hated that she used the right words. And I asked, my voice calm, neutral, the tone I use when I don't want to give away the fact that a grenade has just gone off under the table. "I think it might be healthy," she said, cutting into a piece of chicken like she hadn't just lobbed a Molotov into our marriage. "To explore. I mean, we've been married 12 years, and I don't know, don't you ever feel like we're just going through the motions?" There it was. The phrase, going through the motions. The kiss of death in any long-term relationship. I chewed slower. I watched her face. She wasn't angry. Not defensive. She looked relieved. I felt the spark of something else then. Not pain. Not fear. Opportunity. Because the second she said polyamory, my mind flashed back, 6 months earlier, at a party we hosted. Music pulsed through the house. Glasses clinked, and conversations were buzzing like white noise. That's when Mia, Rachel's best friend, slid up next to me in the kitchen. I was nursing a drink, half listening to a story from one of Rachel's coworkers. Mia brushed her hand along my forearm, lightly, casually, as she reached for the bottle opener. That touch lingered just a second too long. "If you weren't married to my best friend," she whispered, lips barely grazing my ear, "I'd ruin you." I chuckled nervously, playing it off, pretending I hadn't just felt the air in the room shift. I told myself she was tipsy, that it didn't mean anything. But I remembered how her eyes didn't move from mine, how she didn't laugh like it was a joke. Now, sitting across from Rachel, the image of that moment crashed through my mind like a battering ram. I watched my wife stir the remnants of her sauce, clearly rehearsing the rest of the conversation she was hoping to have. I smiled. "Perfect," I said, sliding my plate slightly forward. "Your best friend Mia already agreed." Rachel froze. Fork midair. The blood drained from her face so quickly I thought she might faint. "What? You said we should explore," I said, keeping my tone light. "Mia and I talked. Hypothetically. A while ago." Her lips parted. Her fingers trembled, barely keeping hold of the fork. "That was, you never told me. You never asked." I cut in gently, leaning back in my chair. "But I'm glad you brought it up." I let the silence hang there, let her thoughts spiral around the implications of what I'd said. In that moment, for the first time in years, I felt the balance of control tilt. And I liked it. Rachel tried to recover, pushing a breathy laugh from her lungs. "Oh my God, you're joking." She forced a smile. "Right." I didn't answer. I just tilted my head and watched her squirm. The wine in her glass caught the candlelight. Her throat bobbed as she swallowed hard. "I mean, you're not actually." "Why not?" I asked, calm, measured. "You just said it might be healthy. You're not backpedaling already, are you?" Her expression shifted, part defensive, part uncertain, part cornered. I saw the exact second she realized she had cracked open a door she didn't fully understand. Rachel had always been curious, restless. Over the past year, she'd taken up solo yoga retreats, women's circles, poetry workshops, things she used to roll her eyes at. Lately, she'd started talking about freedom a lot, about expansion, all those words that made it sound noble instead of selfish. She was looking for something, or someone. Maybe she had already found him. I didn't know yet. But what I did know was that she didn't expect me to take the suggestion seriously. Certainly not with Mia. "I thought we'd talk about it first," Rachel said, her voice quieter now. "Together. You know, like, as a couple." "We are talking," I said, gesturing between us. "You brought up the idea. I brought up a possibility. That's how this works, right?" She didn't answer. The silence was rich with tension, the kind that's not quite anger, not quite arousal, but something else entirely. Something like fear and desire twisted together. Mia, that name had weighed in our house. They'd been best friends since college. I'd known Mia as long as I'd known Rachel. We used to double date before we had kids, before jobs wore us down, before the sparks started dying out slowly and silently. Mia had always been flirty, but loyal. At least that's what I thought. Rachel sat back in her chair now, swirling her wine with a hand that was no longer steady. "You're really serious about this?" she asked finally. I nodded. "As serious as you were when you brought it up." After dinner, we didn't talk much. She cleared the dishes. I poured a whiskey. We moved around each other like strangers in a shared Airbnb. I watched her eyes when she thought I wasn't looking, the flickers of calculation behind them, the doubt, the second-guessing. She went to bed early, claimed a headache. I sat in the living room long after the lights were off. The TV played something I wasn't watching. All I could think about was Mia, and the message I was going to send her. Because Rachel didn't just open a door tonight. She pushed me through it. And on the other side, there was Mia. Rachel tried to play it off the next morning like it was all a dream. She came down to the kitchen in her robe, hair wrapped up in a towel, and kissed me on the cheek like she hadn't dropped a bomb over dinner the night before. She poured her coffee, stretched like a cat, and said with a too bright smile, "About last night." I waited. "I didn't mean to freak you out," she said. "It was more of a hypothetical. You know, intellectual curiosity." Hypothetical. The word sat bitter on my tongue. "Sure," I said, sipping my own coffee. "It's funny, though. Mia didn't think it was hypothetical." Her hand paused mid-stir. "You actually talked to her?" I nodded. "Last night. Sent her a message." Rachel blinked. Her smile faltered. "And what?" She's curious. Like you." She didn't respond. Just stood there, spoon still in her mug, but not stirring. I watched her process it. The flicker of panic behind her eyes, masked with that thin veil of calm she always tried to wear when she was cornered. "You're not mad?" she asked quietly. "Why would I be?" I replied. "You brought up the idea." She hesitated. "Well, yeah, but I mean, I didn't expect you to run off and explore." I offered. "Like you said." That shut her up. I let the silence bloom between us. Let her feel the air getting thinner. I wanted her to realize the rules had changed, not because I broke them, but because she did. She laughed it off by lunch. Called it a joke. "You know me," she said, playfully poking my arm. "Always reading weird articles online." I didn't mean it. But her voice was just a little too high. Her smile too forced. Because I think she did mean it. Maybe not consciously. Maybe she was testing the waters. Or maybe, and this is what dug at me the most, maybe she already had someone in mind. Some guy at work. A yoga instructor. One of those candle-scented men with soft voices and open chakras. Someone who'd make her feel 25 again. Someone who wasn't me. Fine. If she wanted open, I'd give her wide open. That night, I sat alone in the dark, phone in hand, whiskey half finished on the table beside me. I opened my messages and scrolled until I saw her name. Mia. Me. Rachel brought up polyamory tonight. Funny timing, right? I hovered over the send button for a moment. Once I pressed it, there was no going back. I tapped it. The message was delivered instantly. And then, those 3 bouncing dots. Typing. And typing. And then they stopped. Then started again. Then stopped. I waited. And finally, "Mia, wait. She really said that? Are you serious?" I stared at the message for a full minute before replying. "Me, dead serious. Over chicken marsala." "Mia, Jesus. I thought you were kidding that night at the party." "Me, you weren't." "Mia, I was tipsy. And curious." "That's different." "Me, still curious?" Another pause. Longer this time. Then came the reply. "Mia, depends. How honest are we being now?" I sat back in my chair, staring at those words. My heart beat faster than it should have. There was a time when Rachel's texts made me feel that way. That was years ago, before everything turned into bills, calendars, and forced date nights. I typed, "Me, let's say, completely honest." Mia's reply came quickly. "Mia, then yeah, I'm still curious. I've always wondered." She didn't have to say what she'd wondered. I knew. That night at the party had replayed in my mind more than once. The touch on my arm, the heat of her breath against my ear, the suggestion hidden in her smile. But I always shut it down before it could root. Now I let the seed sink in. Because Rachel had given me permission, even if she didn't realize what that meant. The next few days were strange. Rachel tried to go back to normal. She kissed me goodbye in the mornings, texted little updates throughout the day like nothing had shifted. But she was watching me. I could feel it. When I laughed at my phone, when I stayed up late reading, when I didn't ask her who she was texting. We both knew the game had started, and neither of us was willing to admit it. At night, I'd lie next to her in bed, scrolling through messages with Mia. What began as teasing turned flirtatious. Then confessional. She told me Rachel had always been the wild one in college. That she'd once kissed a girl on a dare in a bar bathroom. That she cheated on her boyfriend senior year and swore she'd never do it again. Rachel always had this idea of what a perfect life looked like, Mia typed one night. She picked you because you were safe. Good man. Good job. Reliable. But I don't think she ever stopped being curious. Me. She ever mentioned being unhappy? Mia. Not in those words. But she's always reaching for something. I think she thought you'd save her from herself. Me. And did I? Mia. No. But that's not your fault. That's her shadow to deal with. Not yours. That stopped me cold. Mia was supposed to be a diversion. A response to a threat. A symbol of equality in a situation Rachel had started. But Mia was saying things Rachel hadn't said in years. Things that made me feel seen. I set my phone down and stared at the ceiling. This wasn't about sex anymore. It was about control. About power. About truth. Rachel started dressing differently the following week. Tighter clothes. A new shade of lipstick I hadn't seen before. She started going out with friends more, lingering in front of the mirror longer than usual. She wanted to show me she still had it. Or she wanted to convince herself. I didn't ask where she went. I didn't care. Because I knew exactly where I was headed. Mia and I had crossed a line. Not physically, not yet. But emotionally. We were already on the other side. And Rachel had no idea that the war she started was about to get real. Real messy. Real fast. The next time Mia texted me, it was after midnight. Mia, so I've been thinking about our conversation. I was lying in bed. Rachel was asleep beside me, her breathing slow and steady, a faint trace of perfume still clinging to the sheets, one she never wore for me. I shifted slightly, turned away from her, and thumbed a reply. Me. Can't sleep either? Mia. Not really. My mind's racing. This whole thing is wild. I smiled in the dark. This wasn't just flirtation anymore. This was something with momentum. Me. Regret talking to me? Mia. Not even a little. But I do have questions. I slid out of bed as quietly as I could, grabbed my phone and my hoodie, and padded downstairs to the kitchen. The glow from the fridge lit up the room as I poured a glass of water. My phone vibrated again. Mia. Hypothetically. That word again. We kept using it like it offered protection. Mia. If something happened between us, would you tell her? I stared at the message. The weight of it. The implication. This was no longer about revenge. This was about intent. I typed, then deleted. Typed again. Me. If something happened between us, Rachel would already know. Emotionally, we've already crossed the line. We're just not calling it what it is yet. She didn't respond for a minute. Then, Mia, yeah, I feel that too. Another message followed before I could answer. Mia, you're dangerous when you're honest. I leaned against the counter, heart thudding just a little harder than I liked to admit. Me, you're dangerous when you're curious. A pause. Mia, fair enough. And now I can't stop wondering. That's when I knew. We were past theory now. Past teasing. The curiosity was real. The next day, Rachel was in one of her strange, floaty moods. Cheerful, distracted, glowing in a way that felt performative. She played music while cleaning, wore a flowy sundress I hadn't seen in years, and hummed under her breath while texting someone with a soft smile she didn't bother to hide. She wanted me to notice. Wanted me to ask. I didn't. Instead, I pulled out my phone and sent Mia another message. Meet coffee sometime. Just to talk. In person. She replied almost immediately. Mia, are we still pretending this is all hypothetical? Me. I think we're past that. Mia. Then yes. I want to see you. We met 2 days later. A cafe on the east side. Quiet. Rustic. The kind of place Rachel used to drag me to before she decided lattes weren't spiritual enough. I arrived first and grabbed a table by the window. 10 minutes later, Mia walked in. She looked different. Less like Rachel's best friend. More like a woman on a mission. Dark jeans. Fitted top. Hair loose around her shoulders. Sunglasses that she pulled off slowly as she spotted me and smiled. Hey, she said, sliding into the chair across from me. Hey, I echoed, trying to keep my eyes from lingering too long on the curve of her lips. For the first few minutes, we kept it casual, work, mutual friends, random TV shows. But then the conversation shifted, naturally, inevitably. So, she said, sipping her coffee, Rachel really brought it up? Just like that? I nodded. Said it might be healthy to explore. Mia rolled her eyes. God, that sounds so Rachel. She called it a joke the next day. Mia raised an eyebrow. Was it? Not for me. She looked at me for a long moment. Something passed between us. Tension, curiosity, heat. It was subtle but undeniable. You know, she said, stirring her drink slowly. I've been thinking about that night at the party. I leaned in, elbows on the table. Have you? I said something stupid, she admitted, cheeks flushing slightly. I shouldn't have. Don't, I said. Don't walk it back. Not now. Another silence. But this one wasn't awkward. It was heavy, thick with unspoken things. Then she smiled, slow and sly. Maybe Rachel's idea wasn't completely terrible after all. My breath caught. That was the moment. The exact second we both stopped pretending this was hypothetical. We didn't touch. Not yet. But when we stood to leave, she lingered. Walk me to my car, she asked. Of course I did. She led me across the parking lot, to a spot tucked beneath the shade of an old oak. She leaned against the driver's side door, eyes never leaving mine. I keep thinking about what you said, she whispered, about how we already crossed the line. And I think I'm okay with it. I took a step closer. You sure? No, she breathed. But I want to find out. For a second, we just stood there, inches apart, the air crackling. I could smell her perfume, feel the pull of her gravity. I didn't kiss her. Not yet. But I thought about it all the way home. That night, Rachel came home late. She was glowing, effervescent, radiating that same artificial joy. Dinner ran long, she said, dropping her keys in the dish by the door. I looked up from the couch, TV remote in hand. So did mine, I said with a smile. And that was the first time she looked at me with something close to suspicion. Because whatever she thought this game would be, she was starting to realize she didn't have control of the rules anymore. It was Mia's idea to meet again. Not by accident. Not at a crowded party or a group gathering, but just us. Intentional. Deliberate. She picked the cafe, a small, moody place downtown that Rachel used to love. We hadn't been there in years. It felt like a choice, not a coincidence. Thought it would be poetic, Mia had texted. Poetic. Dangerous. I showed up anyway. When I walked in, she was already there, sitting in the corner booth, back to the wall, coffee in hand. Her hair was pulled up this time, exposing the elegant slope of her neck. She wore a white blouse with a few buttons undone and black jeans that did things to my self-control. She smiled when she saw me. Not big, not wide, but knowing. Hey, stranger, she said as I slid into the seat across from her. Hey. Neither of us moved for a moment. The air between us was different now, not playful, not speculative. It hummed with tension. We weren't dancing around the edge anymore. She tapped her spoon against her mug and said, I wasn't sure you'd come. Why? Because this is dangerous, she replied softly. Is that why you invited me here? Where Rachel used to come. Mia didn't flinch. Exactly why. I wanted to know what it felt like. What does it feel like? She smiled again. Like I shouldn't be here. Like I shouldn't want this. But I do. God help me, I did too. We talked for an hour, maybe two. I lost track. She asked questions Rachel hadn't asked in years. How's your work going? Are you still painting sometimes? What do you miss most about being in love? That one caught me off guard. I looked at her for a moment, then said, the way it rewires time. The way an hour can feel like 10 minutes. Or 10 seconds. She nodded, eyes not leaving mine. That. Yeah. There were pauses. Long ones. But not uncomfortable. Her foot brushed against mine once under the table, and neither of us moved it away. By the time the mugs were empty and the afternoon sun had shifted in the window, the tension between us had become a living thing, coiled and breathing. Mia licked her bottom lip, almost absent-mindedly. You ever think about what would have happened if we met first? You mean before Rachel? Yeah. I didn't answer at first, but the truth was already on the table between us. All the time, I said. She swallowed. Same. We stepped outside together. The air was cooler now, dusk creeping in. The parking lot was mostly empty. I should go, she said. Want me to walk you to your car again? This time she shook her head. No, not tonight. She turned, started walking, then stopped after a few steps. Wait. I looked up. She walked back to me. Close. Closer. Until we were inches apart. I told myself I wasn't going to do this, she whispered. Then don't, I said. But neither of us moved. She looked up at me. Her eyes flicked down to my mouth, then back up. And then, Finally, she kissed me. It wasn't soft. It wasn't exploratory. It was hungry. All lips and breath and tension turned kinetic. My hands found her waist. Hers found the back of my neck. And for one dangerous minute, the rest of the world vanished. The parking lot, the history, the guilt, gone. All that remained was us. When she finally pulled away, her breathing was ragged. She looked shaken, not with regret, but with the weight of what we'd just done. I need to go, she whispered again. I nodded. Okay. She turned and walked away, but not quickly. Not like she was escaping. More like she was holding on to the moment with every step. That night, I didn't text her. She didn't text me. Not because we didn't want to. Because we both knew. This was no longer a flirtation. We'd crossed the line. Rachel came home late. Again. Different outfit. Slightly smudged lipstick. She dropped her heels by the door and gave me a look that said, "Don't ask." But I didn't need to. I already knew. She poured a glass of wine and sat on the other side of the couch, scrolling her phone, pretending to be relaxed. "Good day?" she asked, without looking up. "Great, actually," I said. "Oh yeah? What did you do?" I looked over at her. She was trying so hard to sound casual. "I met someone for coffee." She blinked. "Just once." But that was enough. "Anyone I know?" I didn't answer right away. Just sipped my whiskey and let the silence spread before finally saying, "Mia." Rachel's head turned slowly. "Seriously?" "Dead serious." She stared at me for a beat, then forced a smile. "Well, guess we're really doing this, huh?" I nodded. "We are." She didn't ask what we talked about. I didn't tell her. Because she didn't want the truth. Not yet. And because if I did, she'd realize she'd just started a war she didn't know how to finish. It didn't take long for Rachel to introduce him. Evan. One syllable. A name that sounded like it came with hair gel and smooth playlists. "He understands my energy," she told me one evening while pretending to make pasta she had no intention of eating. "He's very aligned with where I am right now." I almost laughed. She said it like she was announcing a yoga retreat or a new probiotic. But I nodded, played along, measured, controlled. "That's great," I said. "I hope you enjoy your alignment." Rachel didn't expect that. She paused mid-stir, then glanced up like she was trying to read between my words. But I'd already learned. The less I gave her, the more she wondered. And I wanted her wondering. The truth? I didn't give a damn about Evan. He was a prop, just like Mia had been. Only Mia wasn't just a prop anymore. The night after Rachel's first weekend retreat, with Evan, Mia and I talked until 2 a.m. Not in person, not yet again, but texts that bled into voice notes and back into texts again. It started like always. "Mia, so she's seeing someone?" "Me, a coworker. Soft-spoken type. I'm sure he's a great listener." "Mia, ugh. I bet he smells like sage and disappointment." I laughed at that one. Actually laughed out loud. First time in a while something felt funny, not just twisted. "Me, she says he understands her energy." "Mia." Translation, he makes her feel new. You know what new feels like? Temporary. I stared at that line longer than I should have. Because she was starting to feel less temporary. Our late-night chats shifted tone quickly after that. Teasing became vulnerable. She told me Rachel always talked about me like I was a given. That I'd always be there. That I was the rock of the relationship. A compliment that always sounded more like an anchor. "She took you for granted," Mia said one night. "She built a life around the idea that you'd never leave." I didn't reply for a while. Then I typed, "Me, and you?" "Mia, I think you're dangerous when you let yourself be seen." "Me, that makes two of us." By the second week of Rachel's exploration, she was out of the house 2 or 3 nights a week. She didn't call it dates. She called it connection time. Whatever. I matched her pace. On the surface, anyway. Going out with friends, I'd say, and she wouldn't ask which ones. We had become mirrors, two people playing at openness while keeping score in silence. She wore tighter dresses, took longer showers, and kept her phone face down. I started dressing sharper, hitting the gym harder, and smiling more than necessary when texting Mia. We were both trying to prove we weren't unraveling. But I think only one of us believed it. Mia and I had our own rhythm now. Inside jokes, shared playlists, little photos, coffee mugs, the edge of a bath, the way her legs looked curled up on her couch without even showing her face. Suggestive without being explicit. But there was one night. She sent a picture. Not lingerie. Not nude. Just her, in bed, wearing one of those soft cotton shirts that fall just off the shoulder. No makeup, hair a little messy, looking straight into the camera with this half-smile that wasn't for show. "Mia, wish you were here." I stared at the screen for a long time. It wasn't about sex. It was about intimacy. The kind Rachel and I hadn't shared in years. Maybe longer. I texted back, "Me too," and meant every word. That weekend, Rachel left for another overnight with Evan. "He's taking me hiking," she said with a smile. "Disconnecting is good for the soul." "Sounds perfect," I replied. She stopped at the door, looked back. "You're not upset about any of this?" I tilted my head. "You wanted this." She nodded slowly. But she wasn't satisfied with my answer. Good. She shouldn't have been. That night, Mia came over. Not for sex. Not yet. We sat on the back deck with wine, talking, laughing, letting the night stretch around us like a blanket. At one point she touched my arm. Casually, then not so casually. Her fingers lingered. My skin lit up. "You know this is insane, right?" she whispered. "Completely. And if Rachel ever finds out, she already suspects." Mia sighed. "I never thought I'd be this girl." "You're not," I said, leaning closer. "You're just the girl who happened to see me when my wife stopped looking." Her eyes searched mine for a beat too long, and she said, "That might be the most honest thing anyone said to me in years." We didn't kiss that night, but the space between us felt like an almost kiss stretched across hours. When she left, she touched my face, ran her thumb along my cheek, and whispered, "Don't break my heart doing this." I looked at her, serious. "I'm not here to break anything," I said. "I'm just finally picking up the pieces." Inside, I sat alone on the couch, staring into the dark. Somewhere, Rachel was probably wrapped up in Evan's arms, convincing herself she was healing, rediscovering, or whatever other spiritual buzzword she needed to sleep at night. But I knew better now. I wasn't just reacting anymore. I wasn't trying to win. I was becoming someone else. Someone freer. And the scariest part? It felt good. It started with wine. Mia came over on a Friday. Rachel was gone for the weekend, a wellness getaway, with Evan, which I'm sure meant massages, sex, and hours of philosophical pillow talk. I didn't care. Not anymore. I had my own plans. When Mia stepped into the house, she paused just inside the doorway, looking around like she was walking into a sacred space she wasn't sure she belonged in. "I haven't been here since your anniversary party," she said quietly. I remembered. She wore a green dress that night, low cut, her hair falling in loose curls, and I remember watching her from across the room more than I should have. She was always just on the edge of dangerous. But now, we were done with edges. "You sure about this?" I asked. She nodded once. "I'm not looking for guarantees." I poured her a glass of wine. We sat in the living room, close enough that our knees occasionally touched. The music was soft, something old and slow and smoky. The kind of music that only plays when silence would be too honest. Mia took a sip, tilted her head. "You always play this kind of stuff when she's gone." "Only when the house feels like it's mine again." She smiled, but there was sadness in her eyes too. "She doesn't know what she has." "Correction," I said. She didn't want what she had. Mia was quiet for a beat. Then she whispered, "I want it." I turned to her. She wasn't teasing. She wasn't performing. She was there, fully, present and raw. And then she kissed me. No hesitation this time. No testing the waters. Her lips were warm, soft, and searching, and I kissed her back like I'd been waiting years to breathe again. There was nothing explosive or rushed. It wasn't the kind of sex people write about to shock. It was slower, intentional, like something sacred was being undone carefully, one button, one sigh, one brush of skin at a time. We didn't fumble. We didn't speak much. But when our bodies finally pressed into each other, when she pulled me into her with a whispered moan and her hands clutched the back of my neck like she never wanted to let go, it felt like the final domino falling. I don't remember climaxing the first time. I just remember how she looked afterward. Lying there, her head on my chest, her breath sinking with mine. And for once, there wasn't guilt. There was silence. Peaceful. Real. I ran my fingers through her hair and whispered, "You okay?" She nodded, not lifting her head. "I needed that," she said. "Me too." And it wasn't just about sex. It was about reclaiming something I didn't know I'd lost. She stayed until almost 3 a.m. We didn't have sex again, but we kissed for a long time in the kitchen while the dishwasher hummed in the background. It felt absurdly domestic, like we were pretending we lived in this house together. Maybe part of me wanted to. When she finally left, I stood in the doorway and watched her drive off. The sky was dark and starless. The silence of the house wrapped around me like a secret. I didn't sleep much. Rachel came home the next evening. Glowing. That was the word. Her skin was radiant, hair tousled from the wind or from Evan's hands, and her smile stretched just a little too far. Dinner ran long, she said, breezing into the house like she hadn't been gone for 48 hours. I stood in the kitchen, casually chopping vegetables, pretending to be the good husband. Mine too, I replied. She froze. It was subtle, a pause in the rhythm of her steps, a flicker behind the eyes. Then she gave me a careful smile. Yeah. She tilted her head. You don't seem upset. Should I be? She walked closer, set her purse down on the counter. You've always been so composed. I'm evolving, I said simply. Rachel studied me then. Really studied me. Like she couldn't recognize the man standing in front of her. Good. She wasn't supposed to. We ate dinner like everything was normal. Talked about work, the neighbors, even joked about our dog's growing affection for Rachel's yoga mat. But under the surface, we both knew. Lines had been crossed. Walls breached. We were in new territory now. After dinner, she showered, put on her robe, and climbed into bed with a book. I sat in the chair by the window, scrolling through messages from Mia. There was one waiting. Mia, you okay? Me, she's home. Mia, did she know? Me, not yet. But she will. There was a pause. Mia, do you want her to? I stared at the message, then typed back. Me. I want her to know what it feels like to lose something she never thought she'd have to fight for. That night, I lay in bed beside Rachel. Her back was turned to me, her breathing even, peaceful. She still thought she held the cards, still believed I was the one playing catch-up. But things had shifted. Mia and I weren't a revenge fantasy anymore. We were real. And Rachel? She had no idea she was no longer the only one playing the game. By the end of the month, our marriage had become performance art. Rachel and I existed like co-workers in a modern art installation, smiling, nodding, performing domesticity while both of us quietly tallied sins. We were open, supposedly honest, yet everything felt veiled. She spent every other weekend with Evan now. I disappeared on alternating Thursdays, sometimes with Mia, sometimes just to drive with the windows down and remember what silence felt like without tension. We shared calendars, schedules, chore lists, but not intimacy, not trust, not anymore. Rachel acted like everything was fine. She'd hum in the kitchen, buy new throw pillows, suggest date nights we both knew would be postponed or canceled. On paper, we looked evolved, progressive, emotionally literate. But the truth? We were just two people building a life on separate foundations, watching for cracks and pretending not to see them. She still hadn't asked if I'd slept with Mia, and I hadn't told her, because asking would mean acknowledging, and acknowledging would mean letting the fantasy break. I think Rachel preferred the illusion. Meanwhile, Mia and I were texting every day. What began as flirting had shifted again, not just sexual, but emotional. She'd send me voice notes in the morning, little glimpses into her thoughts between meetings. Sometimes she'd text me from her bathtub, bubbles barely hiding the curve of her thighs in dim candlelight. But the real thing that hooked me? She asked questions Rachel hadn't asked in years. What made you fall in love with Rachel the first time? What scares you the most about starting over? If you could rebuild your life from scratch, what would you keep? Sometimes I answered. Sometimes I didn't. But always, I thought about it. And every time I thought about it, it was Mia who came to mind more than Rachel. Not just as a fantasy, but as someone real, someone present. One night, Mia and I were sitting in her apartment, tangled on the couch with a half-finished bottle of red between us. She had her legs across my lap, barefoot, wearing one of those loose button-downs she liked to steal from thrift shops. We weren't talking. We didn't need to. Her fingers traced idle shapes across my wrist. She leaned her head back, exposing her throat, her skin glowing in the flicker of candlelight. I don't want to be a mistake, she said softly. You're not. I mean it, she added, looking at me. I don't want to be the thing you regret after all of this explodes. I held her gaze. You're not a mistake, I said again, firmer this time. You're the only thing in this mess that actually feels real. She exhaled, nodded, and then kissed me like she believed it. Back at home, Rachel was shifting too. She was no longer defensive. Now she was careful, measured in her words, strategic with her affection. She'd touch my shoulder as she walked by, ask how my day was, kiss my cheek before bed like we were living inside a memory. I realized then, she wasn't in love with Evan. She was in love with freedom. But freedom, it turned out, looked a lot like distance. And now, she was starting to feel it. One Saturday afternoon, I caught her standing in the kitchen with her phone in her hand, staring out the window. She didn't see me at first. She was just standing there. Still, her mouth was pressed into a line, her brow furrowed. She looked like someone trying to remember what happiness felt like. When she noticed me, she straightened. "Hey," she said too quickly. "You want to do something tonight? Movie? Dinner?" I studied her. She wasn't asking because she missed me. She was asking because she could feel something slipping, and she didn't know how to stop it. "I've got plans," I said gently. "Rain check." Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Sure. Yeah, of course." She turned back to the window, and I walked away. That night, Mia and I didn't go anywhere. We just lay in her bed, talking. About nothing. About everything. She curled into me like we'd been doing this for years. And when she whispered, "Stay," I didn't hesitate. I did. In the early morning, just before the sun, I checked my phone. One new message. "Rachel, are we okay?" Just 3 words. But I stared at them for a long time. The first real question she'd asked me in months. I didn't reply right away. I looked at Mia, still asleep against my chest. Her breathing soft. Her hand tucked beneath my ribs. I typed, "Me, define okay." Her response came instantly, like she'd been waiting. "Rachel, you feel different." I stared at the screen. She was right. I was different. And suddenly, I realized something I hadn't been ready to admit. This wasn't about revenge anymore. It wasn't about keeping score. It was about becoming. Becoming someone I recognized again. And the person who helped me get there wasn't the woman lying to herself in our marriage bed. It was the one lying next to me now. I didn't notice the shift at first. Rachel had grown quieter, more observant. She stopped mentioning Evan altogether, which was strange, because before, she couldn't go a day without some spiritual quote he'd supposedly shared with her soul. She still went out, still smiled, but it was off, thin, a layer of frost between every word. Then one morning, I came downstairs to find her sitting at the table with her laptop open and her phone beside her, just staring. Not at the screen. At nothing. "Everything okay?" I asked. She looked up slowly. Her eyes were bloodshot. Her lips parted like she wanted to say something, but couldn't find the shape of it. I knew that look. I'd seen it in the mirror months ago. "What happened?" She reached for her phone without a word, tapped the screen, and turned it toward me. My stomach dropped. It was a screenshot. A message from Mia. Not nude. Not even suggestive. Just a time-stamped photo of the two of us. Me kissing Mia on the forehead, smiling in a way Rachel hadn't seen in years. The message read, "Mia, last night was perfect. I needed it. I needed you." Rachel's hand shook slightly as she held the phone out, then pulled it back as if it had burned her. "Her?" she said, voice barely above a whisper. "Mia?" I didn't answer right away, because there was no point lying anymore. She already knew. She just hadn't believed it could be true. "You said you wanted honesty," I finally said. She blinked rapidly. Her breath hitched. You've been with her?" I nodded. No apology. No excuse. Just truth. Her hands curled into fists, knuckles white against the table. "My best friend," she said, almost to herself. "You're sleeping with my best friend." I stayed silent. There was no defense that wouldn't make it worse. Rachel pushed the laptop closed with a sharp snap. The sound echoed through the room. "How long? Does it matter? How long?" I held her gaze. "A few weeks." She laughed. Bitter. Harsh. "Jesus Christ," she muttered. "Was this your plan the whole time? To get even? To hurt me?" I swallowed the lump in my throat. "No, I didn't plan this." "Then what is this?" I paused and told the truth. "This is what it looks like when someone sees me again." Rachel flinched like I'd slapped her. Her mouth opened, then closed. She stood slowly, backing away like I was something dangerous. "I can't believe you," she said, voice cracking. "I gave you freedom. We agreed." "No," I cut in. "You brought up freedom. You wanted to explore while I stayed safe and predictable. You wanted to rewrite the rules, but keep the parts that made you feel secure. That's not freedom. That's manipulation." Her face went pale. She looked shattered. But still, she didn't cry. Rachel never cried when it mattered. She didn't come home that night. Didn't say where she went. Didn't ask if I cared. And I didn't text her. Because for the first time, I realized something terrifying. I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't even vengeful. I was just done. Mia texted me later that night. Mia, she found out. Mia, I didn't mean for that photo to slip. I was scrolling through our thread at work. I must have hit something. I'm so sorry. It was going to happen eventually. Mia, do you hate me for it? No. Actually, I'm relieved. There was a pause before she replied. Mia, you sure you're okay? No. But I'm sure I'm not going back. Rachel came home the next afternoon. Hair disheveled. Eyes bloodshot. No makeup. She looked human. Vulnerable in a way I hadn't seen in years. She dropped her bag by the door and just stood there. Neither of us said anything. Then, quietly, she asked, "Do you love her?" I didn't answer right away. But I didn't lie either. "I don't know yet," I said. "But I know how I feel when I'm with her. I feel like myself." Rachel nodded once. That was the moment something broke. Not with a scream. Not with an explosion. But a quiet crack, like a thread pulled too tight finally snapping. She moved into the guest room that night. No dramatic speeches. No weeping. Just two people silently acknowledging a truth they'd tried too long to avoid. We had opened a door, and neither of us had realized what, or who, would be waiting on the other side. Rachel didn't talk much after that. She stayed in the guest room, moving her things quietly. No demands. No accusations. It was like we were ghosts drifting through the same house, haunted by each other. She still left for weekends with Evan. Still dressed like she wanted someone to chase her. But now, the performance had cracks. Her smile lingered a moment too long. Her eyes stayed blank when she thought I wasn't looking. She was trying to prove she was fine. But she wasn't. I could see it, the fatigue in her posture, the way she pressed her temples while pretending to scroll on her phone. Evan hadn't saved her. He had distracted her. But the moment she saw Mia's message, that illusion shattered. And now, she was clawing at the walls of her own choices. I overheard her on the phone one night. Her door wasn't fully shut, and I was walking past with laundry when I heard her whisper, "No, it's not him I'm crying about." A pause. "No, Evan, don't make this about you. Just let me feel this, okay?" Another pause. Then softer. I thought I could handle it. But he chose her. Not just to sleep with, he chose her. It stopped me cold. Not because it hurt, but because it didn't. She had wanted the door open, but only if she could control what came through. She hadn't expected me to walk out and find something or someone better. Mia pulled back. That part surprised me. After the confrontation, her messages slowed. Not cold, not distant, just cautious. Mia, she didn't deserve to find out like that. Me, she was going to, one way or another. Mia, still, I feel like I broke something. We all did. I didn't hear from her for a couple days after that. It was the longest we'd gone without talking since this whole thing started. And I felt it. More than I wanted to admit. I kept picking up my phone, staring at our thread, rereading old messages. The way she'd say, "I miss your voice." Or, "Tell me something true." The intimacy in those little phrases wasn't about sex. It was about being seen. And now it was fading. Was this the price of winning? When she finally called, it was nearly midnight. I picked up instantly. "Hey," I said. She exhaled. "Hey." Silence. Not awkward, just heavy. "You disappeared," I finally said. "I didn't know what to say," she replied. "I've never been the reason someone's marriage fell apart. You weren't." She didn't argue, but I could hear the guilt still clinging to her voice. "I don't want to be the villain in her story," she whispered. I leaned against the wall, staring out the living room window. She wrote her own story. We just stopped reading along. Another pause. Then, "Do you regret it?" "No, not even a little." I hesitated. Maybe how it happened. Not that it happened. Rachel spiraled. Quietly, but visibly. She started staying out later than usual. Sometimes she wouldn't come home at all. When she did, she'd smell like smoke and vodka. Her hair disheveled. Her eyes hollow. Once, she came home at 3 a.m., tripped over her heels, and burst out laughing in the hallway like she was 22 again and drunk on freedom. But the laugh died quick. It collapsed into silence as she sat on the floor, her back against the wall, and muttered, "I thought I could be the one who didn't break first." I didn't respond. What could I say? This wasn't a contest. It was a collapse. A week later, Mia texted me. "Mia, can we talk?" We met at a little bookstore cafe downtown. Neutral ground. Safe space. She looked tired. but beautiful in that way people get when they stop trying so hard. Hair in a loose bun. No makeup. A hoodie. Raw. I don't know where this is going, she said, stirring her tea. Neither do I replied. But I think I already picked a side. I looked at her. What do you mean? I mean, she paused, searching for the words. I don't want to keep pretending like this was just revenge. Or just sex. Or just filling some void. It's more than that. She nodded slowly. I think I was falling for you the whole time. I just didn't want to admit it while you were still someone else's. I swallowed hard, because I'd been feeling the same. When I came home that night, Rachel was in the kitchen, barefoot, stirring a pot of something she wasn't even watching. The smell was burnt. Her eyes were red. I saw Mia's car near the bookstore, she said without turning. I set my keys down. We talked. About me? No. She nodded. Quiet. Still. Then turned. Did you ever love me? I looked at her. For a long time. I did. Do you still? I'm not sure. She looked down. Then back up. Me neither. That was the most honest thing either of us had said in weeks. Rachel asked to meet at the park. Not the house. Not a coffee shop. Not even the kitchen, where most of our hard conversations had taken place lately. No. She chose the old park near the edge of the city, the one with the crooked oak tree and the rusted benches we used to sit on before we knew how hard life could actually get. It was early evening when I arrived. The air was cool, leaves crunching underfoot. Autumn had crept in quietly, stealing the green from everything. She was already there when I showed up, sitting on a bench in a black coat, her hair tied back, hands folded in her lap. She didn't look angry. She looked tired, but not in the same hollow way she had before. This time it felt different. Settled. I sat beside her without a word. We both watched the breeze play with the edge of the pond. A mother walked past pushing a stroller. Somewhere in the distance, a dog barked. Then Rachel spoke. I don't want to fight. Neither do I. She nodded, exhaling slowly. I've been thinking about this a lot. About how we got here. I let her talk. I wanted something new. I thought if I cracked open the box we'd stuffed our marriage into, I'd find me again. I didn't think I'd lose us in the process. She looked over at me, eyes glinting under the soft orange light of the setting sun. I thought you'd stay the same. Safe. Familiar. I figured I'd go have my little spiritual journey, and you'd still be here when I got back. I was never going to be a placeholder, I said gently. I know, she whispered. Now I do. We sat in silence again. The kind that had once meant disconnection, but now, oddly, felt peaceful. You're not angry anymore, she said after a while. I was. For a long time. Angry at how casually you introduced the idea. At how fast you ran toward someone else while I was still trying to find the ground. She didn't interrupt. She just listened. But then I met Mia, I said. And I realized, maybe we were both lost. We just looked for answers in different places. Rachel tilted her head. And did you find them? Some of them, I admitted. Enough to know that we weren't saving each other anymore. We were just staying because it was easier than leaving. She swallowed. Her hands tightened around each other. I don't hate you, I added. She blinked fast. I don't hate you either. Good, I said. Because I think that's why we're still sitting here. We're not here to destroy what we had. We're just here to let it go. Rachel's lips trembled. Not from pain, exactly. More like grief wrapped in acceptance. I don't think we failed, she said. I looked at her. I think we just grew in opposite directions. We kept trying to bend toward each other, but the roots were already too deep. I smiled faintly. Poetic. She laughed softly. Too much. No, I said. It's honest. We stayed on that bench until the light faded and the air turned sharp. She finally stood and turned to face me. So what happens now? I think we stop pretending, I said. We talk to the lawyer. We divide things fairly. And we do this with the same care we used to show when we were in love. She nodded. And Mia? She didn't break us, I said. She just showed me what I'd forgotten I could feel. Rachel didn't argue. Instead, she stepped forward and did something I wasn't expecting. She hugged me. Not out of desperation. Not to pull me back in. But to say goodbye. It wasn't long. Just enough. When she pulled away, her eyes were glossy. Do you think we could ever be friends? She asked. Maybe. One day. She nodded again. Wiped her cheek with the back of her hand. And then she walked away. No drama. No screaming. No slammed doors. Just a woman finally accepting the version of freedom she hadn't anticipated. Back at the house, I stood in the doorway of the guest room. It looked more like hers now. Books scattered, sweater tossed over a chair, perfume lingering faintly in the air. I didn't feel the urge to reclaim it. I just closed the door gently and left it be. Later that night, Mia called. I picked up on the second ring. "You okay?" she asked. "I think so." There was a pause. "Did it happen?" "Yeah." "And?" "I think we said goodbye the way people should." She didn't say anything for a moment. Then softly, "Are you free tomorrow?" I smiled. "Yeah, I am." It didn't happen with fireworks. No dramatic declarations. No violins swelling in the background. It just was. A quiet Saturday morning. Crisp sunlight bleeding through the windows of Mia's apartment. A coffee mug warming my hands. Her legs stretched across my lap, still bare from the night before, her oversized hoodie falling off one shoulder as she scrolled absently through her phone. She looked up, hair messy, face soft with sleep. "You want eggs?" "Sure," I said. "If you're making them." She grinned. So demanding. And that was it. That was the moment. I looked at her standing in the kitchen, barefoot, humming off-key, dancing a little as she cracked the eggs into the pan. And I felt it. The kind of calm that wraps itself around you like a warm coat after a long winter. There was no guilt anymore. No lingering edge of betrayal. No voices in my head replaying what-ifs or should-haves. Just this. Just her. 3 months had passed since Rachel and I signed the divorce papers. It was surprisingly civil. We each kept what we'd come in with. Sold the house. Split the profits. I moved into a small condo downtown. Nothing fancy, but quiet. Clean. Mine. Rachel started doing solo retreats. Arizona, then Oregon. She texted once or twice. Not to reopen anything. Just small talk, polite. Closure in slow motion. She and Evan didn't last. From what I heard, she ended it. Said she needed to find herself alone for real this time. Maybe she meant it. Maybe it was just the kind of line you say when you're tired of pretending you're still searching for something that was never there. Either way, I wished her well. I really did. Mia didn't rush me. After the fallout, she gave me space to breathe, but she never pulled away. We fell into our rhythm easily. Some nights I stayed over. Some nights she came to mine. Sometimes we just talked for hours without touching. Other nights we touched like we hadn't spoken in days. It was balanced. Effortless. Real. But something in her changed too. There was a warmth in her eyes when she looked at me now. Less guarded. She used to smile like she was still waiting for the consequences to catch up with us. Now, she smiled like maybe they already had. And we'd survived. That morning, as we ate on the couch, eggs and toast and a third cup of coffee we didn't need, she looked at me out of nowhere and asked, "Do you ever think about her?" I didn't flinch. Sometimes, I admitted. "What comes up?" "Not regret," I said. "Just distance. Like I'm looking at a version of myself I don't recognize anymore." Mia nodded, taking another bite of toast. "She and I used to talk about everything," she said quietly. "Before all this. Late-night calls, wine-fueled rants, who we thought we'd marry, where we'd end up." Her voice trailed off. I think we both pictured something very different than how it turned out. I reached over, took her hand. And now, she looked up at me. Her eyes didn't dart away this time. She didn't blink back guilt or hesitation. She just looked at me and said, "Now I think losing her was the price I had to pay to find something real." I leaned forward, kissed the corner of her mouth. "That makes 2 of us." A few weeks later, we were walking through a little weekend market, one of those places with fresh bread, scented candles, vinyl records, and local honey. Mia was holding a cold brew, sunglasses tucked into her hair, a tiny silver necklace dancing against her collarbone. She stopped at a booth selling handmade rings. Nothing flashy, just smooth silver, small stones, minimalist bands. She picked one up, slid it onto her finger absent-mindedly. "Fits perfectly," she said. I don't know what came over me. Maybe it was the moment, or the sunlight, or the way she looked at me like I was already hers. But I stepped closer, brushed a strand of hair from her face, and said, "You ever think about doing this again? Marriage, I mean." She raised a brow. "From the guy who said he'd never walk that plank again?" I smiled. Maybe I didn't know the right person the first time. She laughed, but her eyes softened. "You serious?" she asked. "I'm not saying now," I said. If it ever felt right again, I wouldn't run from it." Mia looked down at the ring, twisting it once on her finger. Then she met my eyes and said, "What if I asked you?" "What?" She grinned. "What if I was the one who proposed?" Would that freak you out? I stepped closer, wrapped an arm around her waist. Depends how you do it. She leaned up, kissed me gently. I'd probably do it in bed, she whispered. Right after we've both come so hard we forget our names. I'd catch you when your defenses are down. I laughed, pulling her tighter. Now that sounds like a proposal I'd say yes to. Good, she said. Because I like knowing I could. Sometimes I think about how we got here. How Rachel and I opened a door looking for freedom. And how only one of us actually found it. I don't think Mia was the reward for enduring the pain. I think she was the truth hidden inside it. The one I wouldn't have seen if I hadn't been broken open. Now, when I lie in bed and Mia traces her fingers along my chest, we don't talk about the past. We talk about where we want to live next year. What the name of our dog should be. Whether we'll ever learn to cook something besides pasta and stir fry. No fear. No scoring points. No games. Just this. Honesty. Peace. And the kind of love that doesn't ask you to forget who you were. Only to finally be who you are.